But yesterday really was a miserable day all around for New York sports. It was horrible from start to finish. I mean, the Mets claw back, and that's exciting, but of course they lose in dramatic fashion, and the bullpen implodes when they needed them the most. And the Yankees, really, I can't remember the Yankees being that team that finds a way to lose to bad teams, and the Blue Jays are not a bad team, but the Orioles have played better. But they're just finding ways to lose against these teams that they normally beat. I mean, it's been a long time. I remember that year, which was the transition year, and they weren't going to make the playoffs, and there was a bunch of old guys, and they had to rebuild, and I remember them sort of being lifeless then. This version of the Yankees that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, I remember going into the weekend saying, all right, this has been a bad stretch for them, a lot of injury adversity that they dealt with last year, but they'll get right. They got 4 against the Orioles. They'll probably take 3 out of 4 from them. Then they'll roll into this Blue Jays series. They'll take 2 out of 3 there. Then they got the Orioles again, just thinking they would do what they've always done. But no, now it's flipped. The Orioles take 3 out of 4 from the Yankees, and in a critical game yesterday that you feel like is a must-win game for them as they continue to slide almost out of the postseason, 6-2 turns into 12-6 in the drop of a hat, and a 10-run embarrassing inning with 2 guys who you're supposed to count on in Chad Green and Adam Ottavino. I mean, this is stuff I haven't seen from the Yankees in years and years and years, if ever, quite honestly, in my adult lifetime.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's going on with Chad Green. You remember, I think it was about, 3 weeks ago, I can't remember the last time we talked about Steven Matz, and I told you he eventually was going to end up on the IL.
Sure.
I told you he was going to end up on the IL. Just there's something wrong with him. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's fatigue, it's arm, it's elbow. I don't know what, it's shoulder. I don't know what it is. To me, Chad Green looks like that same guy. There's something wrong, and he's trying to push through it, and he just has not been good. He is, and Ottavino was not good yesterday, obviously. Wow. Neither one of them was. And the other thing, too, is that, the Blue Jays do have a lot of good young players. And they're actually missing maybe their best player, who has an oblique strain that he got hurt over the, prior to this series with the Yankees. So the Yankees, they're just injured, man. And the guys that were in those uniforms last year that came through in a big way now are not coming through in a big way, the way that they did last year. So they have got to get healthy. They're a couple games in front of Baltimore, believe it or not. They're still 1 game above 500. The thing I think for the Yankees is to somehow stop this current slide and just tread water and get to the playoffs. And then that's where, Garrett Cole's got to make his money. He's got to make his money there, and that's where they got to get healthy. That's where Stanton's got to be back. That's where Judge has got to be back. That's where Torres has got to be all the way back. And once they can get to that point, then we can see the real Yankees and see whether or not they can make a run. And the other thing, too, is they got to figure out what the hell they're doing with Gary Sanchez. And I feel like we've been talking about him now for 2.5, 3 years, like in a negative vein. And for some reason, he just is about as frustrating as a player as there is in the city of New York today. There isn't a more frustrating player than what he has become from where he started to where he is right now. He is like a shell of that rookie self.
And there's so many people that are split on him, and some of the most fevered fights happen over Gary Sanchez, because you got the Gary Sanchez defenders that say, find me a catcher that's got his type of power, and then every time he hits a home run, 450 feet, they'll say, look, this is why you keep Gary King. All those people that wanted Austin Romine all those years before he left this year, all those people want Austin Romine to play. Look at this, Gary Sanchez. He can carry the offense. But the bottom line is this year the guy's completely lost. I mean, it's home run or nothing. And, yeah, he can still have that game-breaking 3-run home run at some point in a game. But he's killing you 98% of the time outside of that. And it's not just like he's going through a slump and, he hit a couple balls hard the other way, maybe he's going to come out of it. He's completely lost. I mean, it's strikeout. It's boom, he's up and he's down. It's just, it's like he gets dominated more often than not. So, yeah, and sitting him down, trying to get a spark, whatever it is, to get it out of him, nothing has worked.
He's batting 130. Just think about that for a second. He's batting 130. If that's anybody else, they're sent to Scranton or they're DFA'd. Goodbye.
Put Romine behind him?
Right, but here's the thing. Romine was one of those guys last year that came up with a lot of key hits, and he's just not here. Okay, and I understand that he wanted to go and he wanted to try to be a starter for the Tigers and everything else, and I understand that he had a chance to make more money doing, it's not his fault. He's got to take care of his family and everything else. It was the Yankees' fault for not recognizing just how important he was to this team last year.
Put Romine behind him?
And I just feel like they thought maybe if they would have kept Romine, it would have made the pressure even that much more on the shoulders of Gary Sanchez. And I don't know what to tell you, man. He just looks like a minor league baseball player, and notwithstanding the defensive issues that he has had.
Sure, and that's really where it all started. And then there's also the perception, whether it's true or not, because he has been fighting this from day one, that there's times he looks disinterested. There's times he looks like he is aloof and he's not totally in the game, and maybe he doesn't work hard enough, and those things have surrounded him. Now, I will say that there are players in sports who could work very, very hard, and then there are times where it doesn't look like they care, but they really do care just because of their body language. And you hear Aaron Boone defending him all the time. He's working his tail off. Nobody works hard. He's working his tail off just to get that perception out of there. But when you look the way that you do, and then the results have been the way that they've been, and they continue. No, the Yankees have had his back, and I understand they've had some. We thought that they put him on the IL last year, and he wasn't really hurt to sort of get him right. That whole thing, and they've had his back in every turn, and they've given him every opportunity to become a star, and he just hasn't seized it. And that question has to be, when is enough with this? When is he hurting more than he's helping? And then just when you think you've answered that question and he's hurting more than he's helping, he'll hit 5 home runs in 7 games, and you'll say, all right, well, here he is again.
Well, you say
we were
5
foolish
home runs,
to think otherwise.
You say 5 home runs in 7 games. You know how many home runs he's had in the last 7 days? 1. Yeah. You know how many RBIs in the last 7 days? 1. I don't know what to tell you. It's just that to me is a really frustrating part, because with all the other guys injured, he has to be one of those guys like Luke Voigt and DJ LeMahieu, who's back now. Those are the guys that have to carry the team. Those are the guys that have to that have to put up the numbers. Now, I will say yesterday it was more about pitching than it was about offense.
Sure.
But Chad Green's another one. Chad Green has been so good and has been such a valuable member of that bullpen. And for him to have the struggles that he's having this year, and on top of that, the injuries that they have in their starting rotation, much like the Mets, I mean, it's a war of attrition in a 60-game season. And somehow, some way, you got to stay above 500, and you just got to get into the playoffs. And then hopefully, the last 10 days of the season, your team is healthy and they're ready to go and they're ramping it up just in time for October. I think that's what it's going to take right now for both of these teams. And if we talk about the Yankees and how frustrating and how just off balance they are. If the Mets lose, can the Mets lose in any more spectacular fashions than they lose?
No, it really is. And games they've won, too, by the way. I mean, they've had a couple of these where they've won in spectacular fashion. I mean, they have given us, at the very least, a lot of entertainment in both ways throughout this shortened season. I mean, the game after the Seaver news, how great that was. Of course, the other comeback that they had against the Yankees. And yesterday, it went the other way.
Well, then the loss against the Yankees.
Back in.
The loss against the Yankees, the loss against Philadelphia. And, taking 3 out of 4 from Philly would have been money. And, as Keith Hernandez was pointing out, this Phillies bullpen sucks. He didn't say sucks, but was very close to saying sucks because it is Phil. It is Keith. And I always think of Phil because I look over at Phil, and I know Phil wants to say sucks so bad, but he won't say it on the air. But I know, Keith was just like lamenting the fact that, they were going to give Joe Girardi a heart attack. And I'm thinking, the same thing can be said about the Mets bullpen at times.
At times.
And giving Luis Rojas and Met fans agita. And I know, Wheeler pitches yesterday, so you say to yourself, why couldn't we have kept Zach Wheeler? And why wouldn't they just leave him in the game yesterday?
Yeah, well, the question, and he may win the Cy Young. I mean, it's like him or Jacob deGrom right now that could win a Cy Young. And I know it doesn't mean a lot in a shortened season, but it's just sort of funny to look at that. But the question wasn't, do you keep Zach Wheeler for $100 million? The question was, why didn't you extend him before he hit free agency and went into a walk year and finally figured it out? That was the issue with Zach Wheeler. And it seemed like they just didn't want to give him a contract beforehand. Then he has a great year last year, hits the open market as a young starting pitcher who seems to be rounding into shape and maturity. And
past
now
the
this
injuries
is what you got.
the injuries and all that other stuff. And maybe the new Mets owner would not have let a guy like Zach Wheeler walk. They would have paid him the money and kept him in the rotation. The other bad news for the Mets, as we all know, Syndergaard gets hurt, Stroman quits on the team, Matz is now on the IL. I mean, so you look at the Mets starting pitching, and you're saying to yourself, how are they even in any of these games other than when DeGrom is pitching?
Yeah, and when David Peterson in the beginning of the season was providing a bright spot, and you're thinking maybe that would be a good story for them, you see him in his most recent outing. I mean, you're talking about, 5 runs and 2 innings before you can blink. So it's just, it is not. It's been brutal. And here's the Mets offense that's actually looked like a real major league offense. You got Michael Conforto finally looking like the player we've been waiting for a very long time, and they don't have the pitching to match. And that's why average teams are average teams, is they can never sync those things up.
Yeah, I look, both of these teams, if they can just get to the playoffs, you'd like to think, at least I know the Mets have a number one ace that is going to make it difficult for anybody. I don't know about Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole is not, I don't think, has lived up to his contract totally. But I'm not ready to say, that it's been a total waste of time. I think he's got the right attitude. I think he's got the right demeanor on the mound. I think he's been a little bit over-aggressive, trying to, get guys out with his fastball, and that ball is leaking right over the plate, and they're hitting it out on him. So he's got to be more of a pitcher as opposed to like this one of these, guys out there that's trying to be mano a mano. And he's got to be more like Jacob deGrom. He's got to be a better overall and smarter pitcher for the Yankees. And if he can get his game turned around, I would think that once they get to the playoffs, that he would be a difficult out for anybody that they're playing against. So, I feel like every team in the league has got major pitching issues. I feel like every time you turn on a game, no matter who's playing, it's some pitcher you've never heard of that was just called up from the alternate site.
Yeah.
This is his first outing, his second outing. He was called up last year by the Dodgers and then got traded to the Phillies, and then Phillies traded him to Toronto, and now he's pitching for the Toronto Blue Jays in his first outing coming from the alternate site in Rochester. Where are these guys coming from?
Yeah, there's been a lot of no-name guys that the locals have faced that we've seen pitch for the locals. It has been a very interesting year. And, it's funny, you just said if these two teams can just get into the playoffs, I never thought we'd be sitting here saying that about the Yankees. Never once did it cross my mind that would be an issue. And it's an issue right now. It's an issue. It's not a lock. If they don't make it in this year with 8 teams,
they're going to get in as number 8.
Wow.
Right now on their heels are the Orioles and the Tigers. That's who's on their heels.
This is nuts.
For the 8th spot.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.